Hey guys, this is your Hyphus. So this is going to be a real quick video, right? I just had some free time, so I thought I'd just go on a short rant. I've been hearing a lot, and I'm sure we've all been hearing a lot about sort of postmodernism in the Malazan series, and about how the Malazan series is kind of an example of postmodern literature and stuff like that. And obviously, most of you would have seen Andy's video on it, which is a brilliant video, right? But it got me thinking. It got me thinking to so how would it look from a non-Western perspective? Because the great thing about the video that Andy did was that he was very sort of uh, clear on the intellectual progression of how people arrive at this thing called postmodernism, right? He could have just jumped to how the Malazan series was postmodern, and that would have been the easy way to do it, but it would have also been the wrong and lazy way to do it. So he should be commended for doing it the right way, right? For sort of showing us that proper progression. And as I'm sure many of you would have noticed, so that makes sense from a Western perspective because in terms of things like structuralism and modernism, and therefore you kind of go against that and you head into postmodernism. All of that makes sense, right? But from a non-Western perspective, where our storytelling traditions don't necessarily fit into that model, what would our perspective be? So I just thought I would throw out my take on it, which is that from my perspective personally, there is nothing post or modern about the Malazan series. If anything, Erickson is tapping into a very ancient tradition, right? I went through the the last chunk of Andy's video one more time, where he sort of talks about why the Malazan series kind of really lends itself well to postmodern discussions. And I asked myself, would any of the sort of Eastern uh, sort of storytelling styles, or would Eastern mythology fit into this? And the question was yes, in terms of uh, this meta element of readers being able to see what they want into it, sort of subtextual analysis, in terms of it being something that's meant to be consumed over and over again, in some cases, generation after generation. I think the Malazan series has a lot more in common with ancient mythology, and I've touched on this in another video as well, right? So, for example, if you look at the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, these are stories where most characters, in fact, all characters, are in shades of gray, and it's up to you to interpret what the point of them is. It's up to sort of human society, generation after generation, to kind of study these texts and take what they want out of these texts, right? And to interpret what they want out of these texts. Different cultures. If you, the Ramayana is a good example of this. If you go to Southeast Asia, Thailand and Cambodia and things like that, they have their own interpretation of it. You come a little further west into Burma, you have a different interpretation of it. You come into India, let's say North India, like Himachal Pradesh, they have their own take on it. You come to sort of central western India, to Maharashtra, they have their own take on it. You come down to South India, there's the Kamba Ramayana in Tamil, which is far more of a 11th century Chola kingdom reinterpretation of the Ramayana. And then you come to an independent island nation like Sri Lanka, where I live, and we have our own unique take on the Ramayana, because the bad guy in Ramayana, the sort of the demon lord, for lack of a better word in epic fantasy, is a Sri Lankan. So the interpretation of it here is very different. And all of this is based on the sort of the Vedic Sanskrit Ramayana, which was passed down for thousands of years in the oral tradition, right? And as I was saying, you're just left to pick whatever lessons you want out of it. You're meant to sort of look at it from different perspectives. You're meant to take out themes from it, and all of this. We don't even need to stick to a sort of Indian mythology. We can, let's say you look at A Thousand and One Nights, right? For Arab civilizations, A Thousand and One Nights, which kind of really flourished in the golden age of Islam, which is from the 8th century to the 14th century. You can look at that. You can look at Chinese mythology, right? really old Chinese mythology, like the classic of Mountains and Sea, which is a mix of mythology and geography and a kind of traveler's insight. And for a long time, even Chinese historians kind of took it for granted, and these myths don't really give you things in black and white. Different generations, different cultures can interpret them in whatever way they want. Or you can go even further east, the sort of the Kojiki mythological tradition in Japan, right? All of these, many of these are kind of oral traditions as well. But my point is that I think the the Malazan series has a lot more in common with ancient mythology, and Erickson is kind of tapping into a style of storytelling that, as I was saying earlier, to me, it doesn't strike me as post or modern in any way. I understand that from a Western perspective, where you clearly have something called modernism. I understand that from that viewpoint, it is sort of postmodern. But in terms of the overall style of storytelling that humanity has always engaged in, not just in the Western Hemisphere, I mean, overall. In terms of that, I would say that the best way to sort of classify the Malazan style of storytelling is ancient, right? It's, if anything, it's pre-modern and not postmodern. I know I'm kind of playing around with the terminology a bit, right? But I hope you get my point, right? While it is fun to kind of dissect it in the sort of in the sense of uh, Western philosophy, right? I thought it would also be an interesting take for you guys to kind of consider this aspect of it. That from a global and from a larger historical picture, the Malazan series is it's sort of it's harnessing one of the most ancient types of storytelling, right? So that's it, guys. I hope you like my quick take. Tell me on in the comments, right? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Okay, you can't disagree with me, because if you disagree with me, you're a postmodernist, and if you're a postmodernist, then you've got to acknowledge that I can interpret this in whatever way I want. So yeah, I mean, I guess checkmate then. Thank you, guys. See you next time.